Welcome, everybody, to the Depths of Motherhood podcast. This is a special season dedicated to the tribe of the mother. But also, I know any mothers listening will find this extremely valuable. I've created each episode to offer simple, digestible, and supportive information, which I hope will educate and inspire anyone who listens. So, this is by popular demand. Please help us to educate and support the tribe holding the mother. Look forward to passionate and highly knowledgeable guests dedicated to reclaiming the essence of birth and embracing conscious parenting. Throughout our time together, our guests will serve as the guiding voices, illuminating the path towards a deeper understanding of preconception, pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. This is with the mother and the baby being the center of the exploration. In the show notes, you'll discover the link to Nourished Mother package, which will offer many different resources to complement each episode. This is free for all members in the Women's Circle, or £33 for everybody who just wants to purchase the package. A heartfelt thank you to our incredible guests and immense gratitude to my partner for supporting me on this creation. And finally, last but not least, special thank you to Araya, my daughter, for being the endless well of inspiration. Welcome back, everybody. We are here with Karena, who is going to share her beautiful birth story. Karena is a mother to Finn, a womb healer, a psychedelic doula, and she is known as the Mushroom Mama at Fungi Academy. In this episode, she's going to be sharing her journey from maiden to mother. I first met Karena at Lake Atitlan in Guatemala in 2019. And I was on a solo trip to the lake to take part in a 1-month retreat there. And I remember being introduced to her by a friend of ours, Leah, and her energy was, and still is, so radiant and liberating and connected. And so seeing her journey through the years and then seeing that she became pregnant and had a baby, I just had to find out what was happening in her life. At the time of recording, Finn was a couple of months old, so this was really very fresh. So I felt so honored to listen to her story, to be able to sit with her. And her story really emphasizes the importance of knowing our choices and trusting our intuition and knowing that it's okay to make changes with your birth team or your birth plan. She speaks about the challenges she faced in her pregnancy, not just the physical arisings, but ones that she found when looking for the birth team that could most deeply support her in the way that she needed. So I'm not going to give too much away because we are going to listen to Karena now as she shares her beautiful birth story with us, as she journeys from maiden to mother and expresses in her own words what this felt like to her. Thank you so much for being here and holding space for these beautiful birth stories, to give mothers this time to express their experience through their words and through their energy in this space. I would also love to invite you to our online winter solstice celebration, which is on the 19th of December. You can find the link in the show notes. We really hope to see you there. All right, let's take a few deep breaths in, and as we exhale, letting our body come to soften in this space, becoming aware of everything that is in this moment, where you are in the world, the sounds around you, how your body is feeling. And on that next inhale, guide it into the heart space. And the exhale lets that love, that softness ripple through your body and beyond. Thank you so much for being here. All right. Welcome to the show, Karena. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Let's do a little bit of our history. So I met you, it must have been in 2019, because that's when I went to the lake. And you're friends with Leah, and Leah told me about you. And I've been following your journey pretty much on Instagram ever since. But at the lake, that's where I got pregnant, but you continued your journey. So I'd like to like I want to learn more about you because we haven't really fully sat and got to know each other. So, what was happening in your world before you became pregnant? Who was
Oh,
Karina the
wow.
maiden?
Wow, it's so funny to tie this into like knowing each other in 2019 and and that moment of my era of the maidenhood, I was actually exploring DJing at that time, and my DJ name is Chichi. And in the Spanish culture, Chichi means titties because I was running around with my top off and exploring my sexuality. I was actually like deeply involved with like the OnlyFans community. And I was creating content online with my partner, with friends, with yeah, really, me and my girlfriends here actually created like a really strong community of content creators here. And we were bringing people in from other parts of the world, collaborating. And so I was at like my highest like peak of my maidenhood at that point, and it like continued on throughout COVID. I was locked in a space with my partner and our best friend, and they're both music producers. So like I really started exploring like that DJ side of myself, that music producing, but also because we were locked in, like I wasn't really working so much. So I really dived into that content creative side of myself and creating a lot of art, working with women. I had this beautiful backyard that was just this lush jungle. And so I really started now tapping into like my photography and videography. So I was like not only the one in front of the camera, but also behind it. And then just like, yeah, collaborating with so many women, holding women's circles to discuss like the maidenhood really. And yeah, it's interesting. This continued on for a couple of years, and I started a women's collective where we hosted parties around Guatemala with female only DJs and music producers. And these parties were pretty wild, I would have to say. Like that was, yeah, peak era of my wild woman. Which was so beautiful. It was so fun to explore her and discover like, yeah, so many different sides of her. It ended up like evolving too. It was like, I used to be this like primal wild little cat on the dance floor that then turned into like this panther puma. Like I was running the shows now, so I wasn't really on the dance floor but really behind the scenes and holding the energy in this way. And then that was like at its peak in 2022, I would say. And then I went to, and then me and my partner separated, who was the one who taught me DJing and photography and videography and was exploring this like content, like this, it was a very like sacred content creation. Like I would say, like we put a lot of energy into creating these explicit videos. But we did it with like this intention to create art, and it was so beautiful. And then once our relationship ended, I started exploring different sides of myself, really tapping more into like my work with psychedelics in more of the ceremonial way. It was really hard to leave that relationship. He was a huge part of my life, and especially a part, during COVID was a really hard time for a lot of us, I know. And he was my rock in that. And so yeah, leaving that relationship, I went through like a big healing medicine journey and self-discovery too. I started exploring myself as like a single maiden because I was in a relationship most of my life, and I started exploring that side of myself and as a single maiden and what that looked like, and connecting with people. I started traveling and went to Europe for my first time, going to the festival scene around there, finding new forms of music that I wanted to bring into my DJing. Um, yeah. And then actually it's interesting, right before I got pregnant, for like several months, I was really sick in my gut. And as you know, Guatemala, we have some challenges with our water and our food system here. And so I was struggling with like constant parasites and irritable bowel syndrome. And so I started going to these water fasting retreats and working with someone here who like heals the body through water fasting. And then I, from there, inspired me to start working with more plants and herbs. So I went to a retreat on herbalism and started diving into that, getting into my garden. I had just finished building my house in Guatemala. This is my house, and so I've been planting seeds and trees and that was just like, it was interesting. I went from like full party wild woman Karina to like this homesteader and started taking care of like my body because I was feeling really sick and I was constantly sick. And that doesn't mean I fully stepped away from the party world. Like I am a techno like lover, and techno is like my drug or my medicine in another form, I would say. And so I was still exploring that, but it was feeling different. Like I was feeling like already I was shifting, like certain substances weren't connecting with me. I was like, yeah, I wasn't feeling excited to be in these spaces as much anymore and just really wanting to heal myself. And then I met my partner and fell like head over heels for him. Like I was like a little child again. And um yeah, like we weren't together very long before we conceived. And our relationship was just this like powerful. We're just like, whoa, you're the one. Like we're meant to be together. Like, wow. And my body just felt really safe. Not only like what I was doing with my body, but also like finishing building my home and then being in this partnership where I felt like super safe. He was committed to me and our relationship, and I hadn't had that before. And so there, it just like was a recipe of body being like, yes, you're ready.
Well, I just want to say, like, that transition of you naturally moving towards this mother energy where you started to hold the spaces and hold the energy, and then moving into like the homestead. And it's almost like when you said you started to like go on this healing physically, like your body is having a clear out, like preparing. I also had a similar thing, like spontaneous like detox of my body before I got pregnant. How long were you together for before you became pregnant?
Like 6 or 7 weeks.
Oh, that's good. I mean, we were also like, I think we were 5 months, so you
Yeah.
win.
Yeah. No, 6 or 7 weeks, not months.
Yes, I know.
Yeah.
You
Oh,
really got in there.
yeah. 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 Yeah.
And how was
And
that news? How was that for both of you?
it's it's so interesting because like it we were moving through some challenges at that moment we found out. Um yeah, just like for I'm just gonna be so like open and vulnerable here, but like my ex-partner returned to the lake and he was there and it was our first time reconnecting after the year or two of like being separated. He's been traveling the world following his passion and his project, and so he came to visit at that time. And it was really beautiful because like we were able to like have these really deep and like intimate conversations that weren't like, we want to be together, but like it was really nice to like rekindle that like friendship because I knew I wanted him to be my friend for lifetimes. um and and so he came and returned like that exact moment I found out I was pregnant. At first I didn't know I was pregnant. And it's really interesting how I found out. And I'm also just going to be very just blunt here. So I was actually at a psytrance party on a dance floor. And at that point, like I was, smoking tobacco heavily. Like I had to like, I would say I would have I had an addiction with tobacco and not in a healthy relationship with it. And so I was smoking like tobacco on this dance floor, smoking vapes. I was on acid and ketamine, this combination that is probably the most trippiest like you could ever have. I was closing my eyes and then all of a sudden like I'm in this like really intense psychedelic like state and I look down and I'm pregnant on this dance floor and I'm like what the fuck is happening right now? Like, I already had these like little feelings. Like when I got conceived, I'm like, I think I could be pregnant. I just like knew something felt different. And my body felt different too. I took a pregnancy test, it said negative. But this moment on the dance floor, and with my ex-partner, I look down and I'm pregnant. And I look at my best friend and I'm like, I need you to walk me outside. Like I'm about to have like a hyperventilation right now. And I'm like, I can't breathe. And my body was telling me, like, you need to leave this space. Like, you are pregnant. This is not healthy for you. You're inhaling like toxic fumes. Not only was I smoking it like tobacco and cigarettes, I was also being like fumigated by these by this like light show and this smoke machine that was like right in front of me, and my body was just screaming at me like get outside. And I had to have my like two best friends walk me outside, and I just laid on the earth and like grabbed the hold of like the grass that was next to me and was like, holy shit, like my life is about to change. I need to change my behavior with my body. And like, I think I'm pregnant. Like, I just knew it. Also, like, I have a deep relationship with psychedelics. And so, like, I just knew the spirits like communicating with me through those substances. And yeah, my ex-partner was there and I didn't say anything to anyone at that time. I was just like, I went very internal and it was a psychedelic, it was a very psychedelic party where I wasn't gonna leave for the next like 10 hours kind of thing. So I just wrote it out until the next day. And me and my friends got in our shuttle, came back to the lake. I bought a pregnancy test on my way home, came home to my partner and was like, we need to take this pregnancy test. Like, I think it's going to be positive. And we took the test and it was positive. He's freaking out, so excited. And I'm like holding on to my like chair for dear life. I'm like, oh shit. Okay. And it's so crazy because like, and there's a part of me that wanted to be so excited with him. He was just like wanting to cry. I'm just like, and just like, yes, we're doing this. And I was just had this fear like come over me. I'm like, I'm not ready. I actually had a just booked a trip, a work trip slash like leisure fun trip with my girlfriends and my work to go to Europe for 4 months. Oh, I just had like, I was like, my life is just going to change. Like, I just planned 6 retreats for the next year. And so, as much as I wanted to be excited with him, like, all of like my world, like, just flashed before my eyes of just like what, what was going to be different and like how I was not going to be able to do the things that I wanted to at the capacity that I wanted to. And so, yeah, it took me a few days and then I went to a doctor and I got like an ultrasound because I just wanted to be like 100% sure. We got blood tests. And then from there, I came home with like a different excitement. I was like, okay, I just needed a few days to process, babe. Like, we're doing it. Just like, I wouldn't want to do it with anyone else, and just like for context, like I've been wanting to like have a baby for like years, like with my like previous partners too. Like I really wanted to like be pregnant with them. Especially like the ex-partner that I keep mentioning, like I really saw like I wanted a future with him, but he throughout the journey of our relationship, he repeatedly reminded me that was not his path. And so it was like, that's, again, coming back to that feeling safe in my body, feeling safe with my partner. I'd never had that sense of like safety with him. And so like this, like my current partner, Philip, I was just like, okay, once I like cleared out like the working mom mind out of it, I was able to like, yeah, so we're doing this. And I get to do it with you.
Whoa. So you said it took a few days to like integrate this new news. Do you feel like you were able to fully like transition yourself like into moving into like this mother role as you went through pregnancy, or is it something that you're still like moving through now?
I feel like it's interesting. I feel like I've always had that mother role. So like just like my business is Fungi Academy, and people call me the mushroom mama, not because I'm a mom, but because I hold the community as a mom. Like I have this like very Capricorn archetype where I want to, in a sense, like control, but also it's really to hold the space. I really want to hold everyone around me. Like when we go on trips, when we go create these events, people's birthdays, etc. Like I'm the one who is like creating this space for everyone because I have this natural nurturing energy. So this switch, it wasn't so hard. I guess what like started coming up for me in those like when I was like, fuck yes, it was like the in like so much information out there. That's what was just like overwhelming, taking things in, what's right, what's wrong, what's like um that was where like I feel like some parts of um the challenges came up were in like there's just so much information out there for pregnant women, and a lot of it like that is online is stuff I don't agree with or followed in my pregnancy, and that's what like yeah, I guess made it challenging at some points, doubting myself, like am I making the right choices as a mother to be to go about my pregnancy in these ways. And yeah, I did follow some um I guess like I did do my ultrasounds. I didn't have a complete wild pregnancy. And when I say wild, I mean like not going through the system at all. Where I do have a lot of friends who have gone that route and condemn like the other route. But I had this both. And I was kind of floating in both worlds of like some of the ideas that come from the free birthing and like the wild pregnancy scene to like the classic medical system. And it was nice to find my own path, and I feel like I didn't always talk about it because I
Mm,
was afraid of the unsolicited advice that was coming from it, from making my own choices. And so I feel like it's interesting. I wanted to share more about my pregnancy journey online, and I did share a lot of it, but I feel like I wanted to share more of it. But
mm,
I struggle sometimes with this online critic world, and I
yeah.
see it still. And just like a little context backstory of like Karena, actually before she came to Guatemala, I was like um a wellness blogger on
Mm,
Instagram and Facebook and YouTube. I used to host like meetups and online workouts and all these things since I was 16 until I was like 19. This blog was called Tea Tanned and Toned, and one like it was a pretty large blog. Like back then it was like 100,000 subscribers, and I posted, like, I remember I was like posting things and people like saw this video of me at Coachella. I was partying, I was drinking, and they're like, she's a fake, she's a phony, da da da, like she's partying. And like since then, I've had like a really weird relationship with like wanting to be like completely raw and real and online because of this critic world, like judging someone for having like multiple like sides of themselves. I believe to be a very multifaceted human, and I play many different roles, and
mm,
it's yeah, it's interesting throughout my pregnancy. Like I was still holding both. I was still the maiden and I was still the mother, as like we should be, we're haven't fully tapped into the mother space, but I felt like it felt so fun to be both. Like I felt sexy, I
mm,
felt like playful, like I wasn't really fully tapping into like this my sexual side of myself. Like I actually had no libido my entire pregnancy. but it was fun to just like hold these both these archetypes. Um,
I'm really
yeah.
glad you went into that, because there is, I recently just posted something in the depths of motherhood, which was talking about this, like the movements that are coming from social media, and it can be easy to forget that they're coming from a business, like there's these movements and these almost like cults. And if you don't follow these guidelines, then you get removed from certain groups. And it's just the other extreme. It's the same side. It's the same as like the medical system, but like the other extreme. So it's like you have to follow all these rules to be in this group, to reclaim yourself as a woman, as a mother, to be radical in this world, when actually it's so wild because, like you said, we have so many layers. And a part of our layer might be that it's scary to give birth on our own, and we can't be with our body with all them sensations coming through. We might need a human support or a plant medicine or some other medicine, whatever it is. And that's the thing, like where I'm at now is this: the only way I can see this evolution of us moving forward and really being in this place, this authentic place, is supporting women to come back to feel what is inside of them, to see them, their fears, to get to know what feels good and what doesn't feel good. Because I feel like, I say for myself, like it's been many years being in limbo of what I should do, what I am feeling, what people want me to do, and like getting to that point of really knowing like this is an absolute yes or like this is a no. And I think that is, even though we can say, yeah, I'm going to be like that, I'm going to listen to my body, like it's such a journey to actually understand her language over somebody else's conditioned beliefs that are living inside of there. So I really appreciate you sharing that, and I'm sure that will resonate with so many women who are listening to this, who are having all these ideas thrown at them, when actually like this is the time, come home, like be with yourself. So thank you so much for sharing
Mm,
that. It's really
I have
important.
chills. Thank you.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I just feel like, just to touch on that a little bit more, it's just like the narrative that is out there right now is that the medical system is a trauma inducing system for pregnant women and birthing people. And in a sense, like what I kind of, the energy that I'm feeling that's coming out from that, like that statement is like, if you birth in the medical like system, you're going to have a traumatic birth and your baby's going to be traumatized
Yeah.
and forever will hold this trauma. And
You've ruined it for the
for
lineage.
and for me, that, yeah, exactly. And for me, it's like, if you don't feel, it's, I feel like it comes from this like lack of like resources and understanding, like you can have a beautiful birth in the medical system if you are properly
Mm,
resourced, if you are educated. And that's what we're missing, is that education.
yes.
And the same thing, like if you're free birthing and you're not educated and you're not properly resourced, you're also going to have a traumatic birth. and
Yep.
and it is not going to be, you're going to still have to continue to do the healing and do the work for you and your child. And just because you free birth and you had a wild birth, it doesn't make it better. It doesn't make it honestly different. And I feel like, yeah, like I said, it just all comes back to being educated and being resourced.
Mm,
And for me, being resourced was having my midwife and my doula.
mm, that's beautiful. So
Yeah.
let's go into that. So you're pregnant and okay, I'm going to give birth soon. How am I going to do it? So how did that unfold?
Yeah.
How did the planning go?
I mean, planning started honestly day one. I said, fuck yes, we're doing this. I was like, I contacted my doula, and actually my there's a doula here. Her name is Ashley. She's probably birthed like everyone's babies here and at the lake, most of the babies here at the lake. She's incredible. She is this like witch, and just she hasn't completed a term of birth herself, but she just knows that birth space so well and holds it so beautifully. And all the reflections that I had from all my sisters was she was the one. And so I was just like, she was the one. And choosing a midwife, I only had one option at that time. Actually, there's two options. One of them has a little bad rep. She yeah, yeah, I'm not even gonna go into those stories. Anyways, like I pretty much had one option, and so me and her started working together. And we actually found some challenges in our relationship. And she is a mother of three, and that is a lot to hold already. She has
Mm.
an amazing project here. She's working with a lot of midwives, local indigenous midwives. And so there's a part of me that like I felt like I had to work with her because she works with these like local indigenous midwives. So she has this beautiful knowledge from this
Mm.
indigenous people, and also holds like, the education from the medical system. And so like holding these both worlds, I'm like, I feel like I had to work with her because of that. But there was like a blockage in our relationship,
Mm.
and it's not, it was just what I needed, and I needed someone to show up for me and also be committed to like showing up on time. And she wasn't able to meet that. She had like multiple businesses she was running. She had children she was taking care of. She had a 2-year-old, um, which is a lot. And I was a pregnant person who was still working full time, and I had meetings and deadlines, and I couldn't life to show up an hour late,
Yeah.
sometimes not, and reschedule. And I was just feeling really like I was needing support, especially because I had a really challenging pregnancy, actually. Like my physical body was really challenged. Um, Being in Guatemala, I still never healed that parasite. And so I was dealing with that my entire pregnancy, trying to go more the holistic route because the first week of my pregnancy, I went to a doctor. She was like, your baby's not gonna make it if you don't take these antibiotics. So I like fucking
Mm.
shot myself up with antibiotics, destroyed my gut, and it was fucked my
Mm.
entire pregnancy.
Mm.
Excuse my profanity, but
Go for
it
it.
was fucked. It was so bad. I was shitting my brains out like my entire
Mm.
pregnancy, and I couldn't tell if it was IBS or from the antibiotics, or if I still had the parasites. All my tests were coming back negative, so I was just like so confused. And so I really just needed to be held by
Yeah.
my birth team. And so because of that, like it's interesting because like, she reflected like, well, you're not doing the things that I told you to do. And like there was an extent like I was taking some of these herbs, and there's some things I couldn't find, and like I was
Yeah.
couldn't figure out. And it was like, I was recommended to do like, because of my gut stuff, I was recommended to take a tortilla, burn it. So like I could take the charcoal off of the tortilla, put
Oh,
it in a tea with certain herbs, and drink this concoction. And I was just like,
wow. Witchcraft.
you know, it was pretty witchy. And I was like, I don't know if I like resin. I don't want to drink a burnt tortilla. Um, and it was my fault at that point for not communicating that earlier. And she was like, like, why aren't you doing the things that, you want to heal? Why aren't you doing the things that I want you to do? And I'm like, well, is there other, ways about
Mm.
it? So we were just like meeting each other with like conflict. And it's really interesting. And this lasted my entire pregnancy. And it just built up this like resistance in me and in her. Like, and I was like blaming her. And I couldn't like let this like story go. And um, yeah, we were moving out of I was moving into my third trimester. And I just felt like I was constantly going to my doula and like venting to her about it. Um, and just like vomiting, like, blah, like I just don't resonate. I'm reading all these things online. It's like, if you don't resonate with your birth team, you don't have to work with them, find a new one.
Mm.
It's really interesting because like a month before um my my due date, she she got sick with hepatitis.
Wow.
And she was like, I can't be your midwife anymore. Like we can't meet, we can't, like, I don't know how long this is gonna last. um and so then, yeah, I had to find a new midwife, and my doula and I were like searching, and I was like, I'm just gonna free birth. Like I'll just have you there. I just need a doula. That's all I need. Like I got this. And my doula was like, ah. I love that you trust yourself so much, But like I would feel like safer to have someone who is medically trained since I'm not. And like,
Yes.
and we're in the jungle. Like to get to the nearest hospital, we have to transfer by tuk-tuk to take a boat across the lake, then get into an ambulance and
Mm.
then get to the hospital. And so, yeah, she was like, no, I
That's
don't know
really
how
good
to.
that she was honest, you know? It's really
Yeah,
good that she didn't take on a role of, saying that she could do something that she didn't fully
yeah.
feel.
Yeah.
Mm.
But we didn't have another midwife. So like we chose to go to work with a local indigenous midwife. The only thing is there was a language barrier. My Spanish, she speaks Spanish, my Spanish is broken. And so I felt like, well, we both felt like it wasn't like number one choice. And so we'd keep looking and keep looking. So I had some other, like, what if we had another doula? Like, how would that feel? Da, da, da. So we were like kind of just brainstorming and brainstorming. And then her partner at the time was like, I have a friend who's in Guatemala who's a midwife. And she was supposed to go get on a boat, but the boat broke down. She's supposed to travel like in the sailboat, and the boat broke down. So he called her and was like, "Hey, can you come back and be the midwife for my partner's like client?" And she was like, "Yeah, sure." And so like I
Mm.
was like, cool. I was like, "Can you have her send me like a voice note? I want to just get to know her first." She sends me this voice note, and she's just like, um Australian living in New Zealand. And so this like I loved her accent already. Like she just starts, she's like in this voice note, she's like, "All right, Karina, like go grab your birth ball and some tea and like get ready to listen to this story." And I was like, "All right, I'm convinced you're in." And we met, and her name is Claire. And yeah, she used to be like a medical midwife, worked in the hospital. So she's birthed hundreds of babies,
Mm.
which felt like it was so odd how like safe I felt
Mm.
knowing that. And like I knew I didn't want to birth in a hospital only because I just wanted to birth in the comfort of my home. And and actually I do want to like come back to like I had really shitty hospital experiences up until this point. Um, my first OB that I went to, who gave me all this antibiotics, and um, we were supposed to continue meeting, and she kept like missed our appointments. There was miscommunication, and she was being canceled by the community because she made some really shitty medical decisions for two other like births. And so she was being canceled. So I'm like, all right, I'm not going to work with this woman. I was recommended to this guy. And so I started working with him. Um, and it was good at first. Like I had like, just like one appointment with him or two appointments with him. And then my last one in my third trimester in December. And I actually briefly mentioned this in the birth story that I wrote, was that like I had my session with him. He was like, "Wow, you're really big. You're bigger than normal." And like I was trying to explain to him, like, "Well, yeah, like I have a very like tall German partner. Like I'm also larger than most women in Guatemala. Like we're gonna have a bigger baby, you know?" And he's like, "Okay, well, the baby's sitting really low. That's concerning. You might like, I'm feeling that you might be birthing earlier than what your due date is." And I was like, okay, like he just started like fear mongering me in my third trimester. And that was just like overwhelming. And it's really interesting because my partner wasn't there at that moment. He had to, he was running late to our appointment. And so I was sitting in this office by myself. And then he was like, "Okay, so I also had to do all these exams. He wanted me to do a pee exam to make sure I didn't have a bladder infection, check my blood, da da da, all these things." And they all came back like, the only thing that came back abnormal was the bladder, like the pee test. He thought I had a bladder infection, and he was like, "Okay, well, let's check if you also have a vaginal infection." And I was like, "Okay." And you have to do that like an internal exam. It's like you use a cotton swab, you like swab it, and then you send the culture into a lab. So then like, yeah, I've done this before. I've been chronically struggling with BV my entire life. So I'm like, okay, cool. we're going to go do this exam. I know this, like, we can do this before my partner gets here. Cause I don't want him, I don't want to do an ultrasound or anything without my partner there. So we go into the back room and, he's about to perform my vaginal like infection exam on me. And he puts on his gloves and he's like, okay, take a deep breath. I'm going to insert like my fingers. And like, I didn't even think of anything. And I'm like, why are you inserting your fingers? Like, that's weird. Like, usually you have a cotton swab and you swab it and get the culture. And he sticks his fingers in my vagina, which also fucking hurt. Like, I actually, it's interesting. I haven't felt that much like uncomfortability and pain. I just felt my everything just tighten and
Mm,
just like try to like almost like push him out.
mm,
So he like swabs and then he takes a cervical exam and he like swipes my cervix to check if I was dilating. And then he goes, well, you have an infection, but at least you're not dilating. Like, and I was just like, wait, why did you touch my cervix? Like, that was just weird. And I felt after that point, like super uncomfortable and closed up. My partner walks in and he's like, kind of like, what's happening? And I'm like, well, I guess I have a bacteria infection. And it was just like super weird.
wow.
And yeah, it was like really uncomfortable. And then so the rest of the exam was just like me in like kind of like this like shock state. Like I was in this like kind of fight or flight mode. My body was tense. I felt uncomfortable. I almost wanted to cry, but I was like kind of trying to hold myself. And then from then my partner walks in, he only is referring to him. He stops talking to me and he's just talking to him. Like, she needs to do this. She needs to take, so he does the ultrasound. He's like, well, yeah, baby's big. He's in the pelvis. Like, looks like he's going to come early. I'm estimating January, like mid-January. That's a month before my due date. And he's like, okay, you're going to need to take these steroids to boost the baby's lungs. You're going to need to take this and this and this, and like starts prescribing me with all this medication. And he's like, you're going to need to take this vaccine and all this stuff. And I just was just, but not even telling me that I need to take it. She needs to take it. He's referring now to only my partner and telling him what I need to do to protect
Wow.
my baby. And so that was really uncomfortable. We left and I just felt like unease, like not in a good space. I sent a voice note to my midwife and who's still the same midwife from before and my doula, telling them about this like terrible experience that I had. And that, all this medication. So we looked at all the medications together and found like herbal remedies to replace them. So I didn't have
Mm,
to go those routes. And like my bladder infection gone, I re-examined with another doctor in another town, the bacteria infection. And he took a culture set test. This was a week after. Like, I didn't do anything for that. I just went to a new doctor. He did the actual culture exam. There was no infection. And I was at that point, I was just like, I was pissed off at the medical system. And specifically here, I am in a rural area of Guatemala. Like, the medical system here is not as good as like if I were in the city, we're in wealthier areas where private hospitals have a little bit more like funding. And yeah. And so I was very challenged by that. So I was just like, at that point, I'm like, I cannot birth in the hospital because of that, because of what I have access to here. So then when I found Claire, knowing her background, knowing her like her story and who like just what she
mm,
could bring to this space, I was like, I'm not transferring. It's not even a possibility. Because I was supposed to have like a backup doctor just in case we had to transfer. I'm like, what hospital? I like get me a helicopter and fly me to the city, but that's the only way. Like, I would go to a hospital because I just didn't trust those OBs. Not saying that I don't trust all OBs, and I just want to like clarify that. Like, there was an OB in the city that I went to during my second trimester. And she was amazing. Like
Mm,
she made me feel so safe, with all the struggles that I was feeling in my body. And she was like, no, it's okay. Like your body is still birthing your baby. Right. And didn't put any fear into my mind that I was going to have a C-section or something. Cause
mm,
that was like a fear that was coming up with, I was having severe pelvic pain. And yeah, even with all of that, she was still like, like, let's just keep monitoring it. Let's see how things change. Like, go to a PT specialist, start like doing certain like yoga practices, all these things. And I'm like, wow, like
mm,
that felt really good instead of like adding all this fear. So I just wanted to just like say that, like, not everyone in the
mm.
medical field is as terrible as this person was to me. Um, and like I said, I went to that next doctor and he did the exam. He also was like, no, like we're not putting any fear in your mind. Like you don't have a bacteria infection, like that, like all these things. And he just really made me feel so safe. There's just like some people out there. And I also just want to say that in Guatemala, there's a high rate of C-section.
Mm.
Most of my indigenous like friends that I have here, employees or coworkers, they've been fear mongered into having a C-section and taking these like antibiotics and steroids because the doctors told them that their baby's lungs aren't going to be strong enough when they come out or thing X, Y, Z. And so these indigenous communities, this is what
Like
they're,
really being colonized by, by these ideas.
yeah, and it's sad. Yeah, and so that's my pregnancy story, and like actually,
Mm.
like honestly, like a nutshell. There's like more to it, but I feel like that feels like really good to share. Like my last few weeks of like being with my new midwife, being with my doula, just like really put me in a place of like deep
Yes.
breath, deep inhale, deep exhale. I felt like I could really surrender,
Mm.
which that was like the motto of my entire pregnancy and my birth, was to surrender. And every birth worker I was connecting with, every mother, honestly, all my friends, they're like, Karena, this is what you need to do, is surrender. And I'm like, I can't. And then once like my team felt complete, I could, and I did. I surrendered, and yeah, it was amazing to like feel that feeling that was coming up and
What's
really
really
start connecting
beautiful,
to it.
it's so beautiful to hear how you listening to your body and having these experiences where some made your nervous system like, "Eek, something's not right here, like there's a threat," to you feeling so soft and that space to surrender. But even through them feelings of threat, you kind of not running away and hiding, you still continued to move forward, even though it's probably not as convenient to go and see another doctor or visit someone else. But it's like you continue to explore different ideas with your birth team who were there, with your doula and midwife. And I just think that is, I think that's so beautiful and inspirational. I kind of did the opposite. I ran away, but it's like there is other possibilities because I think it's because you did that, you can tell your story and people know, well, there are other options. There are other ways. If you just stay open, stay in communication with yourself and people who are on your team, and you'll be able to find different pathways. So I really
Mm,
appreciate you sharing that side of the story as well.
yeah, actually, yeah, I shared it with a couple of it's interesting. Me and like a few of my girlfriends were all pregnant at the same time, different parts of the world, but I was in communication with them throughout this entire journey because we were all like neck and neck. Our due dates were like all like 1 week apart,
Wow.
one of them one month apart. But we were all like right there with each other. And one of them I shared like, hey, she asked she asked me about my relationship with my midwife, and I told her what happened. And actually I have a new midwife, and she was inspired because she was really struggling with her birth team. And I'm like, and then I found this like Instagram post that actually like really resonated with me, and it was about changing your midwife or birth team, and how okay it is to do that. And then once she did that, she found a birth team that like really resonated with her.
Oh.
Um and yeah, so that felt like really
That's
really,
lovely.
yeah, beautiful. And just
Yes.
speaking on that, I just want to just share what was just like so funny and just coming back to this like needing to surrender. The last like once I hit my right around my due date, like the last week, like because I had that story in my head that I was gonna birth early, every week I was like, maybe now, maybe now. And it never happened. And I'm like, wow, I'm so glad I didn't listen to that guy who told me to take all these steroids and I forget even like some of the things that he told me to take, like my midwife was like, that actually can induce labor. And I was like, what?
Wow. Oh my gosh.
Madness. And so as I got to my due date, all my friends who were birthing like are right around me. I was actually like, I think my due date was first. Theirs were like a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later. They all birthed before me. So I'm like in this like I'm like kind of antsy and I'm like, maybe I'm gonna birth the same time as them. Like, woo. I'm like, as like the days pass, like I was only like one of my good friends, she birthed on February 3rd. And then my other friend birthed on February 5th and I birthed on the 6th. So I was just like right
Oh,
after them.
wow.
But I needed to go actually walk every day because I was feeling so antsy. So I was walking up to my business, Fungi Academy, which is right up the road from me, and they have a river there. And the last day I sat by this river, like with my partner, I was like just imagining my body like being this river and being like a
Mm.
waterfall and like my water's flowing and I'm like yeah, like I am this waterfall, like any moment my water is going to break. I had that like that stereotypic idea that that's how it happens, your water breaks and then you birth.
That's what happens in
Not.
movies.
Yeah, exactly. um but yeah, I was imagining that. I was just calling in that like sense of like serenity of the water and my water's breaking like that. But that night I did go into labor after
Mm.
going to the river and um letting go of that, like they're birthing before me, I need to birth. What if what if I'm pregnant till 42 weeks, like my body's so tired, I'm just so ready. So like it was like a moment of like letting go of that story. Okay, they all birthed before me, like that's okay, like baby wants to
Yeah.
come, baby wants to come. And yeah.
So how did you have any like contractions before this? Have you had any like Braxton Hicks as they would call
Yeah.
them though? So you
Yeah.
had that before, and then
For a
how did
month.
you so how did you know this was
Yeah.
it? It was happening.
I didn't. I'll be honest. Like I didn't, because every night I like that I had Braxton Hicks, I would text my midwife. I'm like, these Braxton Hicks feel stronger. And she's like, okay. And I'm like, okay. She knows, like, okay, this is Braxton Hicks. And yeah, for actually that like week until the birth, like some of these like Braxton Hicks, like I would have to like hold on to my couch or like lean over and like move through them. Like, and I was like, how is this like not happening right now? Um, and because I went to that river and had that moment of like offerings and prayers and being like letting go, I'm just like allowing it to happen. When it happens, when it did happen, I didn't want to overexcite myself. I didn't want to put myself in this sense of like, oh, it's happening. And it's interesting. It was at 12:30 in the morning. I'm just going to start going into the verse story a little bit. But it started at 12:30 in the morning where I felt like a really big surge. It was no, it was a Braxton, it felt like a Braxton Hicks, but different, like to the point where like it woke me up out of sleep. Um, and I didn't think of I had a feeling, but I didn't want to share it with anyone because I didn't want to like, oh, waken everyone up and be like, hey, I did wake up my partner. I'm like, whoa, that was big. And he's like, all right, babe. And then that happened a few times throughout the night. Or that happened a few times within this like hour. And I had to go to the bathroom. I actually released like a little bit of my mucus plug and I took a picture of it and I was like in my head, I'm like, I think that's my mucus plug, but I'm not gonna like put everyone into this like, big story. Oh, I'm birthing now because like my doula and my midwife is like, yeah, you can release your mucus plug and not birth for a week. And I'm like, okay, cool. So like that, those stories are in my head. It's like, yeah, I could be like releasing fluids. Um, but this could just be like an early sign that pregnant, like the birth is going to happen maybe today, maybe in a few days, maybe in a week. And I'm like, great, that's like a long space. And um, so a little bit of that mucus plug came out and I went back to bed. And actually like I've been exploring a lot of this like idea of using orgasms as part of like a pain reliever in birth. And I've always actually used orgasms, whether it's self-pleasure with a partner during my moon or my menstruation, to support with period cramps. So like I believed it. And so this part of me, I was like actually excited to explore like this yeah, like orgasmic birth. I was so afraid of birth, and being able to tie this like this thing together during my birth like was actually making me a little bit like excited to be able to move through some of like the uncomfortability and the pain. So I was like, cool, all right, here's a contraction that's coming up, or like that came. And so like I started like exploring self-pleasure, and I was like playing with myself, made myself orgasm. And like I said, I wasn't really that sexual during my pregnancy, but it was exciting to start using it to support me with the uncomfortability. And I reached this orgasm, this climax, and it created this like intense surge. Like this contraction was bigger than what I had been experiencing. And that's when I was like, I really think this is labor. Like I really do believe it. And then as that happened, like some fluids came out of me. A little more of my mucus plug came out. I'm like taking pictures, and I'm like, babe, look. And he's like, I'm like, look, that's a lot of fluids, right? He's like, like half asleep. And I'm like, okay, take pictures, send it to my midwife. And she's like, oh, that's exciting. And um, but like, let's just keep monitoring it. Like, this doesn't mean like you're in labor. And I was like, okay, fuck. So it's like almost like I wanted to like be excited, like this grand, like it's happening, but it didn't happen, honestly. Like from 12:30 in the morning until 5 a.m. I was like in this back and forth space of like talking to my midwife, like, I think it's happening. And she's like, no, you should sleep and monitor, like just write it out a little bit more. And I'm like, okay. And then I'll try to sleep. And I'm like, okay, don't get yourself excited, Karina. It's not like actually happening, but it's coming soon. So just like sleep and prepare yourself. And I couldn't prepare myself. Like in my head, I'm like fucking excited. I'm like, it's here. Come on, like get excited. And finally 5 a.m. rolls around. I'm like, I cannot lie in this bed any longer and move through these contractions just like lying here. Like I want to just like move. I want to like get up and like flow and start my day, maybe have some food, have some snacks. I want to text all my friends. Like I'm just like, I know it's happening. And so now I'm like, I think I text my midwife. I'm like, okay, like this is it. Like I'm moving through early labor. And she's like, okay, like this is exciting. Let me know when like you're like ready for me to come, but we're not going to come yet. Like me and Ashley won't come yet because like early labor can last a long time. Like, and just like continue to write it out on your own. In my birth plan, like guys, like I wrote out this birth plan. It was like 2 pages, 3 pages long of like all the details of like what I wanted for birth, postpartum, um, like recipes, foods, like all the things. I'm like, it was so detailed. This is Capricorn me, like so detailed. And she texted me, she's like, you said you wanted to go to the lake. You wrote that in your birth plan. Like, do you want to do that? And I'm like, yeah, no, like I can't even imagine walking down to the lake right now. I each contraction brought me to my knees. Like I couldn't stand. Although they were spaced out and like very irregular, like they were intense. Like I was on my knees, like like moving through it. Yeah, and I like got in my bathtub at that point. I texted my girlfriend who was staying here as my postpartum doula, and I was like, I think it's happening. And she was like, I knew it. I could feel you all night. Like I heard you, first of all, moving around your space. 'Cause she was staying in this apartment and I was staying upstairs. And she's like, I could just feel your energy. And yay, I'm excited. Let me know when you want me to come up and we can just start prepping the space. And so I was like, let me take a bath like first, because that's just like my healing sanctuary throughout my whole pregnancy. That was like where I would come back to when I was having like physical body aches and pains, is like the bathtub. And so I got in the bath, and like Philip is like my partner is now like kind of just like doing little things around the house to get things ready and prepare himself. And then my friend comes up with the birth pool and all of like these little decorations, affirmation cards, and starts like decorating and like getting the space ready, because like I had this vision of like my birth being almost like beautiful, sacred sanctuary. Like I was so excited for this like little being to come out into like yeah, this like in a sense, this like ritualistic space. So I had like altars everywhere, candles everywhere, and it was beautiful. And I just throughout the day, it's like, or throughout the morning, I was just texting my midwife and doula, like, okay, I feel like they're 7 minutes apart. I feel like they're this minutes. And they're like, okay, Karina, like, how about you just be with it? Like, I know you want to like have this like sense of control, but like I think you should just like move your phone away and just like be with this like moment, you know? And I was like, okay. So my friend Corey arrives, and she's a photographer. So she starts capturing like the in-between moments, you know, like the giggles, and there's still giggles at this time, which was really nice. Like, I actually live on a property with one of my really good friends. She has a house right next door, and like all of like also a house full of girls that live there, and so they're popping in and out, like you know, coming over, like saying hi, congratulating me, and then they would go back over and kind of just like hold the energy on the land. I actually gave him some puros. Puros is a tobacco that is wrapped in tobacco leaf. It's all natural. It's these like almost like they look like cigars. It's what the indigenous people here they work with a lot. It's like their medicine. The fire and tobacco here is their medicine. You know, they don't really work with like psychedelics, as you know, or plant medicines as you would find in like, let's say, Peru or Colombia or other parts of the world. Like in Guatemala, really they work with tobacco and fire. And so I knew that was like the energies I wanted to bring. And so I gave them all tobacco and told them to light their candles, because we had these white candles that they all gave me during my baby blessing. That was like incredibly beautiful, by the way. Like the most, yeah, insane. Like every woman should have a baby blessing with their maiden sisters and also the mothers, like to hold. And one of the parts of the ceremony that they held for me was like we all had these white candles. I had this very large white candle. It was like as I don't know, 2 feet tall. And they all lit their candle during our baby blessing, and put a little bit of their wax onto my candle. So all of our prayers were held in this one candle. So when I lit my candle, they all lit their candles. So now it's like, you know, 10 a.m., everyone's candles lit. We're like prepping for this like birth journey. And it's just, yeah, super beautiful. And now as like the morning's going on, like the contractions are getting really intense. Like I would like, you know, I don't want to like downplay my experience. Like it was pretty intense. Um, and yeah, I was finding it really hard to like be comfortable. And at that point, I'm like not really interacting with like any of my friends. Like I'm moving from my bed, and I set up this like hammock outside on my porch that overlooks Lake Atchitlan. And so I'm moving back and forth between there. I have a hot pad on my belly. Like my partner is doing these like hip compresses and massaging my back. And my partner and Corey are all taking turns like handing me water. So I just like continue to stay hydrated. And it was like, I just like felt so held and so supported. Like I felt like I didn't need to have my doula and my midwife there. I'm like, they got me right now, you know? Um, and then we finally got to a point where I needed to go back into to the bathtub. And so, and not my birth pool, like my bathtub. And so like I'm in my bathtub and I'm like lying in there and I'm like kind of like at this point of like, oh, this is getting really physically challenging. And so I close the door and I start exploring self-pleasure again, which was like insanely helpful. So every time I felt a surge coming on, I just started playing with myself. I'm like, it was so interesting. It felt so weird and so beautiful at the same time because I'm like, wow, it's relieving so much pain. And also, like, my baby's about to come out of this space. And also at the same time, it makes so much sense. Like, babies are born through pleasure and this connection and intimacy. And now I'm like exploring this space of intimacy with myself, like during like, you know, his arrival. And I'm like, okay, like, so I'm just gonna roll with it. And so like I just, you know, got out of the birth pool and I asked everyone actually to leave the space except for Philip. I was like, ask Corey and Em to just go downstairs. Like, wanted some privacy with Philip. Maybe we wanted to explore some sexy times together. And we tried and it felt just way too intense. I was just like, at that point, I'm like, it wasn't even like, it wasn't even supportive at that point. And then, but they still felt like the contractions still felt so far apart that I'm like, wow, like, how is he not here already? And so I hit like a kind of like a challenging point. I feel like I was at that point, like having a lot of tears and I was crying and like releasing. I was trying to nap in between my contractions and I just couldn't. And I'm exhausted at this point. It's like around 2 p.m. and I'm struggling. And that's when I texted my midwife and her and my doula. And I was like, I think I just need you guys here to show like support me. Because I just like need to be held through these feelings. Um, I guess a big, not fear, but a big thing that was coming up throughout my pregnancies, like, and even now in my birth was the fear of it lasting like 5 days and then needing to transfer or even days, you know. One of my sisters had a birth where a few of them actually, where the early labor lasted several days. And one of them ended up having to transfer to a hospital. And I guess like that kind of fear came up to me for me was that I was going to be in this uncomfortability for days. Um, and so when they arrived, I was like crying. I'm like, I'm not progressing. Like like just like not even like too many words. Just like I pretty much just said, I don't feel like I'm progressing. He's like, da da da. Like it's just taking so long. And like as I had this like huge cry, I had the biggest surge like happen, like the biggest contraction I've had since like yeah, since it started. And my water broke as the surge was happening. And it was that actual waterfall that they put in movies. Like I had a waterfall come out of me and it was like the wildest experience. I still had like my underwear on at that point and Ashley's like, what are you doing? You need to get naked. And like, we like stripped down. I'm naked now, moving through these contractions. And it was really quite beautiful. Like, and like the rest of the time, like at that point, like I left my body. There was no, there was no words that were coming out of my mouth except for like no or yes. That was the only two, like pretty much things I could really form at that point. um and we're exploring like moving through these contractions together. Like at that point Philip was doing like had done all the work like with me and he was doing the hip compresses and all these things. And now Ashley and Claire were taking turns doing the hip compresses. Like it's interesting, I actually remember a point and actually reminded me, like I didn't fully remember, but one of these contractions, like I was like, Claire was like holding, like pressing my hips and I was grabbing onto Ashley's arms, like with my nails, like, like as I'm moving through some of these surges. And it was, yeah, it was just so wild. And I don't have my journal here with me, but all my friends that were there and like my birth team, like Claire, Corey and Em were all taking notes in my journal and time stamping everything. And this was placed on the altar outside, so like everyone can just like take turns and just write down like what they're witnessing or seeing, because I wrote down the first couple notes and then at that point I was like, I was gone. um and Hi, little one.
She gave us a lot of
Yay.
time, but she's with it. She's fine. She
Yeah.
likes to listen in and watch.
Oh,
So
perfect.
you've got
Yeah.
another witness.
Yay. Perfect. At this point, like I am just like releasing these like wild primal sounds. Like, and it's funny because like I'm just like, fuck it. Like, I don't care what comes out of my mouth, but like, I just need to like roar. And like, I am roaring like so loud. And it's even in like written in my journal. And I'm pretty sure like Em wrote it, it's like sounds that are like of this world and of another world. Like it is not like someone else has like entered this field. Um, and that was, yeah, it was just really beautiful to like hear their reflections on like what was coming out of my body. Cause there was a part of me that was like, I don't give a fuck. And I'm a little bit like insecure about like what is coming out of me, because it is like nothing I have ever heard like come out of my body before. And I make a lot of sounds, like I'll be honest, I'm a loud, like expressive person in all forms, on the dance floor, in the bedroom. And this was just, I've never experienced this before. And so yeah, we're moving through this and mostly on my hands and knees. And then we got to a point where I remember like I wanted to like explore self-pleasure again. And I wanted to use like I bought this like vibrator that was like, cool. I think like this would be fun. It was like very feminine. It was like, it was beautiful. It was this little rose and it was mostly for the clitoris. And so I was like, oh cool, I'm gonna explore like using this beautiful vibrator. I literally just bought it for birth. Because my other ones were not, I did not want to bring those toys in. Into the space. I'm like, this beautiful pink rose. It has like this little section. I'm like, cool. I attempt to use it. And the surge that happened as soon as I turned it on was like words can't even describe the like I want to say uncomfortability. It was just uncomfortable. Like I don't want to use like pain and like although it was like they got to a point where there was a lot of pain, at this point it was just so uncomfortable, and bringing in that toy just made it even more uncomfortable um and overstimulating too. Like now at that point, like stimulation around my clitoris was just like way too overstimulating. And like as I was feeling down there, I was feeling his head, what I thought was my body coming out of me. And I was like, oh, my vagina is bulging out. But actually, like his head was right there. And Ashley was like, all right, you're either gonna birth in this bed or you're gonna birth in the pool. And I'm like, I want the pool. And so what they thought was going to be an easy mission. This is hilarious, like Guatemala. What they thought was going to be an easy mission to like just take the hose that was linked to the bathtub and like fill up the pool ended up being so challenging because we ran out of hot water in Guatemala. And yes. They had to take the hose. And luckily, like Philip bought an extra one. So just in case like something happened, we could funnel it from my friend's house, Anna's house, that is so close, and funnel this hot water through this long hose into this birth bowl. And like, so like I have like my friends Gigi and Allison over there, like holding this like stick up to make sure like the water has like this angle. So the water is like flowing into this bathtub. Em and Corey and Claire, everyone else is like, and Philip are all filling up like downstairs, upstairs. There's hot like water being boiled in every possible like vicinity, like thing. Anyways, everyone is trying to get water into this bathtub, and I have no idea this is happening. I am just so in my space, in my bubble. Like I've put on this protection bubble and have just dropped in like completely. And now they're all doing that. And I had no idea until afterwards. No, when they shared like videos of them doing it. And I'm like, that's so funny. Um, so that was like, I'm glad they all had a moment. Like they were all panicking and laughing at the same time, but like more so like, fuck, like this is our mission. They all felt like they had like a huge role to play now. And finally the bathtub is like full. Actually, before that, like we did one check, like we never did any like cervix checks or anything. But we did one heartbeat. So we did to have like one examine of the heartbeat of the baby just to check how baby was doing. And that was right before I moved into some side lying positions at first. Like I actually discovered this epic position. And that's how I continued to birth in, was like kind of this like side lying position where someone was holding my foot and giving me this like counter pressure, almost as if I was like had my feet in stirrups, but like sideways. And like I was pushing like into these like stirrups, which were their hands. And like we were giving this like counter pressure. And it was like really, wow, I loved that. And that's when we moved into the birth pool. And like I had my birth playlist on and I was dancing and swaying and like kind of singing, and actually like my contractions like calmed down, which like in a sense like gave me a little bit of like a worry, but I also was a little bit prepared for this. Like a few of my friends told me like when you get into the bathtub, like you kind of relax and you calm down and things can slow down a little bit, so just be mindful of that. And so I was just mindful of that, and I didn't want to just like, I felt like I could fall asleep. I was like so ready to um just fall asleep in this moment. And something that I actually haven't tapped into yet in this story was during my pregnancy, I actually went into a very like, for pregnancy, a large mushroom journey to prepare for my birth experience. I had two of my girlfriends, um, one of them who is my like co-collaborator in at Fungi Academy. We host mushroom ceremonies together for women, um, and they created this beautiful mushroom journey for me in my third trimester, where they had like the squishiest lounge space set up, with like a beautiful altar, a fire, and this giant pool, almost like the size of a birth pool, prepared for me. And so the intention for this was to like surrender, to let go of fears, and really again coming back to that my kind of my motto for pregnancy, surrender. And during that, I explored these crazy positions that I've never put my body into before. And I'm like dancing in this pool. I'm dancing on all this like squish in front of the fire. And I'm like moving my body. I'm like opening. I felt like I was like, oh, maybe I'm like gonna go to labor tonight. Didn't. But I'm like exploring these really amazing like positions that just were so opening and fluid and dancing. And so like I'm so grateful for that, because when I was in my birth space, once I got into the pool, I started remembering these movements, these positions that my body was getting into. And I also did a lot of birth prep. Like I was like, like I was that person that like educated herself. I even did a doula course on like, and to learn all the things, like because I wanted to know, like I wanted to be so resourced. So when I got into this moment, like everything's like now like subconsciously ingrained into my body. Like I've already gone into all these positions before, like I just knew. And like I do believe in the innate wisdom of the body, and I also believe in remembering and like supporting yourself or other women on remembering that innate wisdom that is there. And I really needed to like have those preparation um spaces, like what the education and this beautiful mushroom journey, to that I could just like flow in this bathtub and like do these crazy weird lunges and squats and like bringing your knees in, so you could like have like the inlet open, and I was, yeah, it was just so beautiful, like what I remember of what my body was doing. And then it got to a point where things were getting a little bit more intense, and yeah, my birth team started supporting me a little bit more by like holding my feet in different positions, like I'm back on like my back, and doing these like drawing my knees in, opening them out, swaying, and now we're like singing all together too. Like Ashley knows some of the songs that are on my playlist, and it's like the most like, I would say, the most beautiful psychedelic journey like I've ever been on. Like I just like in this moment, like I feel it a little bit. Like I'm like in that space of like where we're singing and swaying all together. And I just remember Claire being like, because the contractions, like at this point, like now I'm in pain. Like it is painful. Like baby is like in the canal, like right there, like trying to like push out, like he is about to start, like he is crowning actually at this point. And Claire was like, let me put a little bit of like compress, like warm compresses on the perineum. And she tried, and I'm like, fuck no, get your hand out of there. That does not feel good. We tried to move through it like a couple more times because maybe she just like got a spot, but like it was so interesting. Like it just like for me just did not feel good at all. Um, and we continued to go back to like this like you know, my feet are in their hands and we're pushing, and yeah, we got to the point of crowning, and it was coming up like this, like one of my biggest fears of this birth, the ring of fire. And this, I just remember I was gone. Like I was like in and out of consciousness, like falling asleep between every contraction because I was so extremely tired, and then coming out like when it was with like wild eyes, like pushing like wow, like madness. And then that like that moment of the ring of fire, like I just like, oh my gosh, I just remember like his little nose was like moving against like the area of my vagina, like right like below the clitoris. And I'm like, fuck no. And like I went like look up at Ashley, and I'm like, nope, we're not going there. Like he can't go, he's not gonna go past there. That's not possible. That I feel like it is gonna rip right open. And like I guess like I did have a fear of my vagina like ripping open and tearing, and especially the one where um the vagina to the asshole rips, the perineum. Did not want that to happen. And so I like looked at her, and we had this moment of like, no, yes, no, yes. And I was like, okay, there's no turning back, you know, like at this point, I'm like, yeah, it's not possible for me to go to a hospital right now and perform like a C-section or get epidural or anything. Like it is up to me now. And so like I just like that point like just gave it my all. And like at the same time, like as much as I was like, get him out of me, like this is intense, I was still like remembering my breath, and I would like take like a deep breath and slow down because I didn't want to tear. And like I knew that, like I knew this was like not a moment to rush. And so like we moved with every breath, and it was like really beautiful. I just remember like everyone, like there was no words that were really being like exchanged like throughout this journey. It was really just like intuitive, like yes, no, like body language. And it was this like most profound like dynamic between like my partner, Ashley, Claire, and I. As soon as they arrived, it was just so fluid. And at this point, everyone knew like it was happening. And I gave it this like push, and everyone was like, he's here. And then I'm like, I sucked him back in. I'm like, nope, he's not ready. Like that was not the one. And I just continued that for a few more times until like his head actually like came out. And I just like I remember like looking up and like also like seeing everyone like oh, and like everyone expecting like me to just like hold him for a little more and like then push the shoulders out. And I was like, nope. And I just gave like the biggest push I could possibly feel. And like I just remember his like shoulders just like shooting out of my body. Just like it was like he just came out like a cannonball at that point. And it's funny because I don't remember this part so well, but Claire told me that it took me a moment to like come back to my body and grab him. Like I just like lied there for a second, like, whoa, fuck. And then she was kind of just like holding him in the water, like, all right, Karina, are you gonna grab him? And I came back and I was like, oh yeah, like grab my baby, which for me felt like milliseconds, but apparently it took a moment. And then I grab him and I put him in my arms and I'm holding him again, what felt like right away. I thought he took his first breath like instantly. And she said it took about 2 minutes for him to take his first breath, which time at that point was just so like non-existent. And yes, that moment was like, words don't even describe like the beauty that I was feeling, and I was in complete awe. And in my mind, I'm like, ah, yes, like how beautiful. So we did it. And what came out of me was I just like can't get over like my first words. Like, what the fuck? That was gnarly. Everyone just starts laughing, and I'm like, yeah, that was real. That's was my real experience. It was gnarly. Like it was so beautiful. And don't get me wrong, like I made the most, like I created the most beautiful space to hold this gnarly energy that was like happening, like leaving my body, going to spirit world, dancing like with the spirits for quite some time. Like it was like, I mean, what a lot of people would say is like it wasn't that much time. Like I think my active labor was 3 hours, and they're like, that was so beautiful. For me, it felt like this like wild eternity. Like I felt like I was gone for for a long time. Um, and I was still at that point was gone, but I was just like in such awe, like looking at him, but like really just like, wow, my body did that. Like, holy shit. Like I was just like in shock of just like the women of the world that birth and do this every day. And I also was like remembering like at that moment, like how many other people were birthing with me at that time. I was just like in just utter like shock. And then we like were transferring to the bed. And when I stood up out of the bath, it was really like funny because like I was totally expecting myself to like shit all over the place, especially with my pregnancy experience. Like I had really bad like diarrhea and bowel movements, like just being really blunt and like raw, like as birth and pregnancy is. Like I was totally expecting my birth pool to be like full of shit, and it was crystal clear. This beautiful like clear water with rose petals like floating all in it. And I'm like, okay, that happened. Like actually like not even like so much blood or fluids. And yeah, it was just wild for me to like see that. I'm like, okay, that happened. So we stand up and we're walking to our bed, and I recognize that the umbilical cord is super short. And so like as I'm moving, I'm like pulling my placenta, but my placenta is not ready to be birthed. So it just felt like this aching pain, and it was like really uncomfortable. And I'm like, wow, that's when I realized like birth is actually not over when your baby comes out of you. Like it is still continuing. And so we get into the bed and like we like make our way into like our first like latch, which like was really successful and it was really beautiful. And like we're just like everyone is just laying there like in awe. Like it was just so beautiful. Like, oh my gosh. Um, and yeah, I think like we at that point, like wow, it's like so it's still a little blurry for me, and I haven't fully written this part out yet. Um, but like we weigh him, and it's really funny to like we weighed him and we thought like he was gonna be a big baby, just like my doctor said. He's like, oh, you're gonna have a big baby. He was like 6 pounds and 2 ounces, which was is not that, not that much. Like some women birth 10-pound babies, which I'm like, holy shit, that like in that moment, I was like, I'm not doing that again. Like, what if my next one is 10 pounds? Like, no, I'm not having a 10-pound baby come out. Um, yeah, I had some like real raw moments at this point. Like, fuck, that was so intense, especially because I still had this placenta in me. And so we waited, like, I think it was about like an hour before we cut the cord. And I had this like idea that I was gonna eat, like, do like this like candle burning. We're gonna burn the cord off. And like she was like, that takes like 45 minutes. I'm like, Philip, you cut the cord. Where are the scissors? You can cut the cord. It's really funny how you get into these like these spaces. You're like, fuck it, it's okay. Like it's still sacred, these are sacred scissors. Like whatever. Because we were so tight, my umbilical cord was so short, like it was just tugging on me, and I felt like I just had this constant pressure from my placenta, like there, but not wanting to be released yet. And so yeah, it was really beautiful to have like Philip cut the cord and just like be able to have his moment with baby. And that's when me and Claire went to the bathroom and I birthed my placenta over the toilet. Because like I needed to be in this like squatting position and I couldn't do it on my own. Like she actually had to support by pulling on the cord while I pushed, and I pushed as if I was pushing a baby out of me. And it's really interesting. And like, I just like, this is something I would tell like most like pregnant people, before their birth or first birth is like, listen to birth stories where they talk about birthing placentas and like, understand the birthing the placenta part, because that is honestly was just as challenging for me as like the moments I was birthing him, and in a different way. Like it wasn't like with him, there's moments like the pain, the challenges that I felt, whereas this burning sensation with the birthing the placenta, it was this like, I already had so much pressure on my vagina at that point. Like my perineum had so much pressure on it. And now there's another thing that is putting so much pressure on something that it felt like was bruised. So imagine having like a really big like bruise, like now like you're just like it's like poking like a bruise, like a really bad bruise, like a really tender bruise. That's what it felt like. And so she's pulling and I'm pushing and I'm like almost like wanting to scream again. And we finally got to the point where like the placenta fell out, and she took the placenta, and her and Ashley did like a reading on it. And I, honestly, like she started right after she came to me and brought the placenta and was like telling me like, oh yeah, this means this. And I was just like, there's pictures of this moment. I'm like, just staring at her, like jaw dropped, like, I have no idea what you're saying, lady. Like, thank you for doing this for me. And like, let's write this down because I am still not fully here in this world. Adam was extremely exhausted, like just in so like shock, just like seeing this little baby. And oh, I actually hear him right now.
He's here.
Yeah, he's here. Yeah,
Um,
his little baby.
we're talking about you.
Hi, Finn.
When
He's
did
like
you pick his
mama.
name?
Actually, the moment before he was conceived, here's little Finn. Hi,
Oh,
my love.
Finn. I'm sorry, I took your
Yeah.
mum for such a long time.
Okay. It's okay, baby. I know.
Oh my gosh. How old is he now?
He is 3 months and 2 weeks.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
Oh
or one
my
week. That three
gosh.
months and 1 week.
I feel so
Yeah.
honored that I've got to listen to this story so raw. Wow.
Yeah, so raw. Yeah, I was like, oh, maybe I'll read my birth story, but actually, no, I'm just like, I just want to tell it and see what comes up, and I'm sure
Yeah.
like there's like little bits of it that I forgot, but I also like remembered little bits of it that I didn't write in my birth story that came
Mm.
up. So that was like really nice to be able to tap into those moments. And yeah, just to like close it off, like um what was really beautiful is while I was birthing my placenta, um, Finn and Philip had their like first like daddy time together, and they did
Oh.
they did skin to skin,
Mm,
and like as I'm in there, like all the girls are like coming to me, they're like, Karina, that's the most beautiful thing in there right now. Like
mm,
Philip and him when we're crying, like Philip was just like in awe of what just happened and just
mm,
holding his child for the first time. And just like I wasn't able to like fully witness that, like him just like having his moment, like crying and with the babe. And but just to hear that afterwards, I was like, wow, I chose a really good one. And
mm,
in that moment, I knew like it was just everything was so perfect and meant to be, despite all the challenges in our pregnancy and my physical body being so challenged. And yeah, just like seeing the way he showed up in the birth space, and then immediately after was just like, yeah, it's like I couldn't have asked for like a better family to do
mm.
this with. And
Oh
mm,
my gosh.
yeah, just like wow, looking at him right now is just, and yeah, it's amazing. And we did a few more like, oh hi baby. We had our girlfriends there, like Corey and and M was feeding me soup, and while we're doing some like final like exams of Finn and checking his size. Hi babies.
Mm,
Yeah, I know. So I'm being like fed soup, and then my girlfriends like came over just for a quick second that were helping fill the pool, and just like popped in to just say hi and also collect the placenta, because one of my sisters was gonna tincture it and encapsulate it for me. And so it's like really beautiful to have them just like come in for this one raw moment, see the like the
mm.
experience, and then leave. And then after that everyone left, and it was just us three. And that was wild. Just to be like, wow, it's just us now. Like
The
no
calm
one,
after everything.
oh my gosh. And like I couldn't sleep. I just wanted to stare at him all night, which
Mm,
I was so tired. I think I like had a few little like sporadic little naps. Um, but what was amazing was like actually the postpartum support that we had. Yeah, that was just like next level. And if you're curious to hear about it, if you have any questions, like super happy to share.
maybe we should get on for a postpartum podcast, another one.
Yeah,
Honestly,
yeah.
because I feel
Mhm.
like there is these, like, we can prepare, like we can listen to things and prepare, but actually listening to the stories of postpartum is
Mm,
where the medicine is, because that's where, we can throw the books out the window, but it's how do people show up? Oh, he is so
yeah,
gorgeous. Hi, Finn. Nice to meet you.
I
Welcome
think.
to the world. We're so happy to
Yeah.
have you here. I feel so moved listening. I love listening to birth stories anyway. I'm like kind of addicted to them, but it feels so beautiful to be able to follow your story from like the beginning of meeting you
Mm,
and now know what's happening in between. And I just also want to just give thanks to all your support team as well for everything that you
mm,
had. It's just so beautiful to hear from your partner to your doula and your midwife and all the family around you is really
yeah.
incredible, really, really beautiful. And it just opens my heart to hear this. And I'm so proud of you, like how you showed
Thank
up.
you so much.
Thank you for sharing
Yeah.
your experience, your full journey to
Yeah.
this point.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like yeah, wow, it's wild to like wrap that all up into like I don't even know how long that took.
And
Hour and
my
a
daughter fell
half.
asleep, so I'm just like, it's great.
Yeah, perfect. It's just so wild to like wrap that whole journey from like, my maiden 2019 when we met to like now, and like and just reflect on that whole journey. And like actually like, you know, the journey started in around 2019 when I started really building my community here and really
Yeah,
building these
yeah,
foundations here. Like I had no idea what I was actually doing was prepping for, um, becoming a mother, because like it takes a village, and I really created my village. And I really just want to like name that. Like like I'm so grateful that I have this like really like close community, and a lot of them like sisters, like who were able to like show up for me like so fully, especially because like my my closest friends, none of them are moms. And
Mm,
so they were, all maidens. And so they had that capacity to show up for me in that space. And I just like, when I think of it, I'm like, I just don't know how I would have done it without them.
mm,
And then I think about the women who don't have the support and don't have like, family members or, chosen family members to go on this journey with.
yeah.
And yeah, I guess like, yeah, it's a sad and scary thing for me to think about. And so I just like hold all the women out there who, don't have the support. And if, our stories and that we share can support them on their journey, like
Mm.
I'm just so, yeah, I'm so grateful.
I was, when you said after you gave birth, you were thinking about all the mothers and like, wow, how incredible my body's just done. That I had exactly the same thing. I just thought, if I can do this, I can do anything. And then I thought about all the mums around the world. I'm like, wow, that is freaking incredible. Well
Right.
done for like guiding the maidens as well, like inspiring them, because that's another thing that's coming up in community is how do we guide the maidens to step into this role to support mothers, instead of not just inspiring them to be mothers, but to actually build the community from that energy. So
Mm,
I think that's a very
yeah.
beautiful thing. And actually, I'd like to talk to you about that in another episode if you're willing to come on,
Yeah.
because you've created this and you're supporting women who haven't moved into, haven't given birth yet, or they're still in their maiden role. So I'd
Yeah.
really love to talk about that for sure.
It excites me. Finn
Yes.
says hi.
Hi, Finn, you
Hi.
absolute beauty. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, Finn's
Oh,
like, yes.
it does something seeing a mother breastfeed, like a young child like that. I'm like, oh, it's so fascinating. Almost as though I've never breastfed. I'm like, look how amazing the latch is. Like, look at his little chin moving. Like, oh my gosh, it's so cute. Oh,
Yeah.
I love it. I'm getting
Yeah.
broody. I'm getting broody.
Oh,
Maybe I'll come and
it
have another
wasn't,
baby at the
yeah.
lake.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. I got you.
yes, yes.
Oh, well, thank
Thank
you
you
so
so
much for having me. I appreciate you. And yeah, Finn is ready for
Yeah.
Mama to get out now.
I really appreciate it, honestly. And thank you, Finn, so much